I first heard about observed practice through one of the allied health professional meetings that we had, and I thought it sounded a really good way of exploring how I could improve my own practice. I thought it, I was really inspired by the talk we had on it, and thought, how could I, use that?
Okay, and how did you decide which area of practice that you wanted to be observed?
Well, I gave it some thought, and if I'm honest, if I look at kind of group facilitation, it's always something I've found harder than one-to-one sessions with service users. So I thought I would use it specifically to look at how I could improve my facilitation skills of groups. And I also decided I'd choose a group that I find particularly challenging, which is the anxiety management group that we do on our unit, as often service users can be quite reticent in speaking within that group. So I thought perhaps this will be a good opportunity to really see how I could use the observed practice to improve on that.
Okay, so Bernadette, why did you choose me to observe you?
I gave it quite a lot of thought because I did actually have the opportunity to have another person had offered to do the observed practice.
So I wasn't your first choice?
No, you were my first choice.
Oh, thanks.
But I actually weighed up the pros and cons,
Yeah.
and all the I'm sure the other person would have done a good job. I thought it was really important that I had somebody doing this that I knew really well, that I felt really comfortable with. I also think I can rely on you to be honest, so I know that as well as kind of giving positive feedback, you'd also give me kind of if there's anything that I need to challenge, any areas that I need to kind of look at to improve. And I knew that you'd do that in a sensitive way as well, which is what happened. And I think on a wider basis, I know for myself, it certainly, I felt my confidence was really boosted after having the kind of feedback session with yourself, which then meant that I've felt a lot more confident when facilitating groups. But on a wider basis, frequently we have new staff who start on the unit, and I'm then able to kind of support them with kind of facilitating groups, with them shadowing me in groups. So I think the actual kind of positive effects are quite wide, really.
No, I agree.
Yeah. There were nerves on my part, certainly, and I think initially I was really kind of very self-conscious of my body language, what I was saying, the language I was using, but it was within, I would say, possibly about 10 minutes, I actually forgot that you were there.
Yes.
Because we set up the room. That was one aspect of it, was that you were actually kind of in the corner, and I think actually the patient, the service users themselves forgot that you were there also after a while.
Yeah, I think initially when you actually introduced the session and identified me being there as the observer in the corner, they sort of gave me some attention. But after a couple of minutes, I think they very much settled into the group and very much focused on you as a facilitator. And I don't think that being there was in any way a distraction to their engagement in the group.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, I take your point that, initially I think you were a bit hesitant and you were perhaps explaining things a bit more than you would normally, but I think you soon settled into your own sort of distinctive style, and I felt that the group ran really sort of effectively but also smoothly, without any sort of direct sort of distraction with my presence.
Yeah.
So I think it worked well, and I think you gave obviously a lot of thought to the environment and sort of adapted it in the best way you could, and I was very much sort of, like you say, in the corner with very much the service users had their backs to me, so they could give you their full sort of attention.
Yeah.
And I think that worked well.
Yeah, I think ironically it was probably one of the best groups I've done.
Really?
So it went
Right.
really well.
Yeah.
So having said at the beginning that it could often be a group that can be quite challenging because people are reticent to engage.
Yeah. And were you aware of me sort of throughout?
Well, just as I say, initially, and probably at points through the kind of the observed practice, but generally I think I tended to forget you were there after a while.
Yeah, because I think obviously I was using the actual toolkit, which was really helpful and structured in sort of making me aware of what I needed to be observing you on and the different areas in which I had to comment on. And I think obviously I was familiar with the actual toolkit before I started, and I would recommend anyone do that before they actually go into an observed practice setting. But yeah, I had to really concentrate and make sure that my notes very much fitted into with the toolkit. And so I wasn't directly sort of staring at you, because I think if I had been, that would have been perhaps made you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that is good actually, and I've kind of done this from both perspectives now, because following you observing my practice, I've also been the observer, and I think from both perspectives, I found after the session it was really good that you could kind of reflect in a really structured way with the toolkit. And like you say, if you're using it as the observer, it also supports you to really kind of know exactly what you're looking for and break it down. So there's a real kind of good structured formula with the toolkit, which I just think it's really user friendly.
Yeah, I would agree,
really
definitely.
Good.
And I think it was good that after completing the session, we had a very sort of brief sort of feedback to each other, but then we went away and I sort of compiled all the paperwork, following on from the toolkit, and wrote a report, and then we met a couple of weeks later in which we went through the session and discussed my observations, but also your observations of the whole process. I think we both generally agreed it was a positive experience.
It was, and I think often you can, it's really good in the sense that yes, it can kind of highlight things that you need to work on, but there were things that Edward kind of brought out positives about my facilitation skills, things that I'd kind of just taken as, kind of hadn't realised about myself, taken for granted, and not kind of recognised that they were actually skills, personal and professional skills, that I'd kind of become so an innate part of myself that I hadn't actually kind of recognised them as skills. And I thought that was really good that you kind of as an objective observer were able to kind of see that and kind of feed that back to me.
Sure, and I think as well as as the observer, it sort of helped me sort of reflect on my own practice, because I was seeing a different sort of health professional facilitating a group, a type of group that I wouldn't perhaps generally facilitate in my own practice. But I was able to see someone else using their group facilitation skills, and I took something away from that. I think you sort of showed me a way of doing things slightly differently, and so it helped me sort of not just reflect on my group facilitation skills, but also to look at ways of improving them. So I took something away from it as well, not only giving you feedback about your practice, but something for me to sort of reflect on and work towards improving. So I think generally the benefits are twofold for both of us.
I just wondered, Edward, because we've obviously talked a lot about how I felt with the observed practice, and I just wondered about you. What did you think when I kind of said, "Oh, will you be my observer?"
Yeah, I think initially I was obviously flattered that you'd asked me, but I was a bit apprehensive as to how the actual process of someone observing your practice could improve it. And I also wondered as to whether just having someone observe you would very much get in the way of the group, that it would be a disruption that would be detrimental to the aims and objectives of the group that you're facilitating. But I have to say, I felt the experience was a positive experience. I felt that the actual toolkit itself very much set out the structure of the session, but also the individual roles. It was really clear what was expected of me. I thought the actual toolkit itself was very explanatory in its language, in what it was asking of me to report on your practice and to record my observations. So generally, I felt it was a positive experience, and it was something that I would definitely want to build on, and in fact to have my own practice observed. And obviously I would be asking you to do that, because I think it's something that as health professionals we can learn an awful lot about our practice, but also seek ways to improve our skills. So definitely I would recommend it.